Good evening, and thank you for joining me. Tonight, we'll step back in time to a place where the harsh forces of nature and the tides of history collided in the most unforgiving way. Imagine yourself in the dead of winter in Russia, where the air is so cold that each breath feels like daggers against your skin. The snow blankets everything in sight, and the freezing winds cut through even the thickest layers of clothing. It's not just the cold that grips you, it's the weight of history bearing down on this desolate, frozen landscape. You stand in the heart of Russia, 1917, a country torn apart by war and revolution. The streets of Petrograd, once bustling with life, are now silent, coated in thick sheets of ice. The houses are poorly insulated, their windows cracked from the relentless cold. Inside, there is little comfort. People huddle around flickering fires, wrapped in tattered blankets, barely able to escape the chill. It's as if the revolution itself is frozen in time, waiting to burst forth, and you feel it in every bone. This is the backdrop of the October Revolution, a turning point in history that would reshape the course of the 20th century. Led by the Bolshevik Party, under the iron-fisted leadership of Lenin, the workers, soldiers, and peasants of Russia took to the streets to overthrow the Tsarist regime. But as they marched towards their goal, they also faced the harshest winter in memory. Survival in this frozen landscape wasn't just a matter of politics, it was a matter of life and death. As the revolution rages and the Bolsheviks fight to seize control, you realize that the cold is as much an enemy as any political opponent. The snow falls relentlessly, the winds howl like wolves, and every step is a struggle. For those who rose up for a new Russia, the battle wasn't just for a future, they had to fight for their very survival in the heart of a frozen, hostile world. Tonight, you will walk alongside those who endured the bitter cold, the hunger, and the turmoil of the revolution. You will feel the weight of their struggle, hear the howls of the wind, and experience the frozen tension of a time that changed history forever. But most of all, you will see just how far people will go when the will to survive is stronger than the chill of winter itself. So, settle in. Let the quiet darkness of the night embrace you, and allow the story of the October Revolution in the midst of a Russian winter to carry you away. Let's begin. You march through the endless white, your footsteps swallowed by the deep, snow-covered ground. Each breath you take feels like sharp ice filling your lungs. You're not just fighting for a political cause anymore, you're fighting the merciless Russian winter. The cold seems to be everywhere, a constant companion that gnaws at your bones and slows your every movement. The layers of clothing you wear are thin, threadbare, barely enough to shield you from the bitter chill. Your boots, caked in snow, are falling apart with each step, and your comrades are just as badly equipped. Yet, you push forward, driven by the revolution, determined to see the Bolsheviks take control. But every hour, every minute in the cold feels like an eternity. And the struggle isn't just for the future of Russia, it's a fight to stay alive in the face of nature's cruelty. You trudge through the deep snow, each step feeling heavier than the last. The weight of the revolution is upon you, but it's nothing compared to the weight of the cold. Every breath is a battle, each exhale turning to mist and vanishing into the air as if your very life is slipping away. The once pristine white of the snow has turned into a muddy slush, stained by the exhaustion and despair of those trudging through it. The crunch beneath your boots sounds louder now, the sound of each movement seeming to echo in the desolation. Your comrades march beside you, heads lowered against the biting wind. They too are dressed in thin, patched clothing, their faces gaunt and pale from hunger and fatigue. Some walk with their shoulders hunched, trying in vain to shield themselves from the wind. But there's no escape. Not from the cold, not from the weight of the cause. Your boots are soaked through, the wet leather sticking to your feet. But there's no time to stop and fix them. The revolution won't wait for you. Every step feels as though you're being pulled into the earth, the snow acting as both enemy and ally, dragging you down while also covering your tracks. You know that if you stop, even for a moment, the cold might swallow you whole. The wind howls through the trees, bending them into skeletal shapes, and the freezing air bites at your skin, a reminder that you are not welcome here, not in this place, not in this time. Your thoughts are a blur. You think about the revolution, what it could mean for Russia. You think about the end of Tsarism, the possibility of a new government, a new way of life. You think about Lenin and the men who follow him, their words of hope keeping the fire alive even in the deepest darkness. But it's hard to hold on to those thoughts when the cold gnaws at your bones and the hunger twists your stomach. When your mind is clouded by exhaustion, when your body is on the brink of collapse, the ideals that brought you here feel distant, like fading stars in a never-ending night. And yet, you march. You march not because you believe the revolution is a perfect solution, but because it's the only thing that makes sense. The snow, the biting winds, the frost that covers your skin and stings your eyes, they're just obstacles. They're just part of the world you must endure to fight for something better. You push forward, because to stop would be to give in, to acknowledge that the world has won, that this frozen, desolate place will claim you like it's claimed so many others before you. Your comrades keep their heads down, their faces drawn with fatigue. There are no words between you, no songs of rebellion or cries of hope, only the sound of boots crunching in the snow, the wind that seems to howl louder with each passing hour, and the occasional cough or groan as someone stumbles and falters. There is no laughter, no warmth. The only thing that remains is the bitter realization that survival is the victory. One of your comrades, a man named Alexei, stumbles beside you. He's one of the younger recruits, barely old enough to grow a beard. He looks like he's barely holding himself together. His cheeks are hollow, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. But when you look at him, you see something that tells you he's ready to fight to the end. He looks at you with a vacant expression, his lips cracked and frozen from the cold. He mutters something under his breath, but it's too soft to hear, lost in the howling wind. Without a word, he falls behind, his pace slowing. You can feel his struggle, the way his legs seem to give way with every step. He's tired, so tired. You don't blame him. Everyone is. But you can't stop. Not now. You take a deep breath, fighting the impulse to turn and help him, to offer him your coat, your warmth. You've seen this before. Someone gives in, someone falters, and then the whole line is in danger. So you march on, forcing your legs to keep moving, your body protesting every step. The cold isn't just a sensation now, it's an entity. It has a weight, a power that presses down on you, weighs you down like a physical force. The winter is relentless. It doesn't care if you're sick, if you're hungry, Or if you're tired, the winter will take what it wants. It always does. As the day stretches on, you find yourself growing more distant from everything around you. The cold, the hunger, the exhaustion, all of it becomes a blur, an indistinct haze of numbness that blurs the line between reality and something else entirely. You try to focus on the task at hand, but it's hard to keep your thoughts clear when every part of you feels like it's shutting down. It's then that you spot something ahead, a small, dim light flickering in the distance. You think it's a mirage at first, the cold playing tricks on your tired mind. But as you approach, you see it a fire, small but real. Your heart skips a beat. A fire. It's not much, but it's warmth. It's something to cling to, something to keep you going. You push forward, your steps quickening as you draw closer to the light. But as you near the fire, you see that it's not what you expected. It's not a camp of fellow revolutionaries, not a place of safety. Instead, it's a makeshift shelter, barely more than a pile of snow with a flickering flame at its center. A few men huddle around it, their faces just as gaunt as yours, their eyes hollow from hunger and fatigue. One of them glances up at you, and you feel a pang of disappointment. They offer you a hard, crusted piece of bread, but it's dry, nearly inedible. You take it anyway, tearing off a small chunk and swallowing it quickly, desperate to fill the gnawing emptiness in your stomach. There's no warmth to be found here, no safety. The fire is just a fleeting flicker against the relentless cold, and after a few minutes, you know you have to keep moving. You can't afford to waste time. You leave the shelter behind, feeling the weight of it, knowing that there's no real refuge here, not in this frozen wasteland. You march on because you have no choice. There's nowhere else to go. As the hours drag on, you lose track of time. The sun hasn't been seen for days, hidden behind an endless sky of gray. The cold tightens around you like a vice, and your limbs grow heavier with each step. You're moving on instinct now, your body pushing forward because it has to, not because you want to. The landscape begins to blur, a dizzying stretch of white with no end in sight. You can barely feel your feet anymore, your hands stiff from the cold. You've reached the point where your body is no longer your own. It's a machine, a thing that moves without thought, driven by the revolution, driven by survival. And still you march. The wind howls louder, the snow blows in all directions, and you know the cold will keep coming, just as it always has. But you refuse to stop. You push forward. Each step a battle won against the elements, against the very nature of the land itself. You fight for survival. You fight for the revolution. And you fight because that's the only thing you know how to do. And as you march, in the deepest cold Russia has ever known, you find the one thing that keeps you moving forward: hope. A fragile, flickering thing, like the fire you left behind. But it's enough. It's enough to keep you going. In this frozen wasteland, the struggle for survival is no different from the struggle for revolution. Both are hard, both are long, both are uncertain. But in the end, you march on, because there is no other choice. You finally reach the trench, your shelter from the wind, but it offers little relief. The cold seeps in from every crack and crevice. You huddle with the others, your breath forming mist in the frigid air. The snow has piled up to your knees, and each movement requires an effort you didn't think possible. The wind cuts through your tattered clothing like 1,000 knives, and your body trembles from the cold, exhaustion, and hunger. The ground beneath you is frozen solid, a painful reminder that the earth itself isn't your ally. The trench offers no warmth, no comfort, just the bitter, unrelenting cold. Your stomach growls, but there's nothing to eat, only the hope that anything will come through to keep you going. The air in the trench is thick with the smell of wet earth and the sharp tang of sweat mixed with the acrid scent of smoke from a nearby fire, though it offers little warmth. You try to settle into a small corner, your body aching with each move, your limbs stiff and heavy. The cold has become a constant presence, gnawing at your bones, sinking into your skin with every breath. You wrap your arms tightly around yourself, as if the cold could somehow be held at bay. But the reality is harsh. There's no escaping it. You glance around at the others huddled near you, their faces hollow and weary, their eyes glazed with fatigue. Their expressions mirror your own, lost, desperate, and simply trying to make it through another hour, another minute. The trenches are silent, save for the occasional cough or the mutter of someone too tired to keep their thoughts to themselves. No one speaks of the revolution anymore, not in the way they once did. What's left to say when the weight of survival is greater than the fight for an ideal? The snow continues to fall in relentless sheets, blanketing everything in sight. The trench, once a place of refuge, now feels like a tomb. The walls, jagged and uneven, press in on you from all sides, and you wonder if there's any hope of making it through the night. The ground beneath your feet is frozen solid, offering no comfort. It's as if even the earth itself has rejected you, hard and unyielding as it is. You can feel your body growing weaker with each passing hour. The hunger is constant now, gnawing at your insides, but there's no food to be found. Not here, not now, just empty stomachs and aching limbs. The others, those who still have the strength to move, sit in a daze, their eyes unfocused, as if the cold has already taken its toll on them, draining the fight from their spirits. You hear a distant sound, an echo, a gunshot, or perhaps just the wind. Your body tenses instinctively, but there's no movement in the trench. The others are too tired to react. The world outside may be alive with the sounds of battle, but here, in the trench, there's only silence and cold. The hunger continues to gnaw at you, an ache that can't be sated. You think back to the last meal you had. Was it yesterday or the day before? It doesn't matter. It was a few crumbs of stale bread and a sip of watery soup, barely enough to coat your stomach. That was all. It feels like a lifetime ago. You can barely remember what it's like to feel full, to have the warmth of a proper meal in your belly. In the distance, a flare bursts into the sky, its light briefly illuminating the dark expanse of the battlefield. For a moment, you squint up at it, your eyes straining against the cold, the blinding snow. It's a brief reminder that the revolution is still happening, that there's still a fight to be won. But for a fleeting moment, you wonder if this war, the revolution you've been fighting for, is worth it. Is this the price of victory? To endure endless nights in the cold, to fight not only your enemies but the elements themselves, to question, as you stare at the pale light, whether any of it will matter when it's all over. But the thought doesn't linger long. The cold forces you to focus on the now, on the moment. You pull your coat tighter around yourself and shift, trying to find some comfort. The others do the same, each of you moving in a slow, deliberate way, each motion a small victory against the exhaustion. A few minutes pass before someone stirs in the group. It's Mikhail, one of the older soldiers who has been with the Bolshevik army for longer than most of you. He looks over at you, his face as weathered as the earth around you, his eyes a hollow reflection of the same fatigue you feel. He doesn't say anything at first, only glances at the others as they lie slumped, their bodies unmoving, the weight of sleep or unconsciousness already taking hold. "We can't stay here," Mikhail mutters hoarsely, his voice barely more than a rasp in the still, frozen air. "The cold will kill us first." You don't respond immediately. There's nothing to say. You know the cold is a killer, just like any enemy soldier. Maybe worse, because it's invisible, but there's nowhere to go. The trenches are all there is. You clench your fists, trying to force the feeling of cold away, but it's impossible. It's inside you now, wrapped around your very soul. Mikhail looks at you again, his eyes sharp despite the weariness. "We'll make it through," he says, though it sounds more like a command than a statement of hope. "We have to." You nod, not because you believe it, but because you have no choice but to keep moving, to keep enduring, to keep fighting. What else can you do? There's a rustle in the trench as someone shifts, their body too tired to stay still any longer. One of the younger soldiers, a boy barely out of his teens, rolls onto his side, a faint moan escaping his lips. He's been unwell for days now, his skin pale and thin, his body trembling from both the cold and something else, something worse than the elements. His breathing is shallow, too shallow, and his eyes flutter open. The boy looks at you, his gaze vacant, as though he's lost in a fevered dream. His lips move, but no words come out, just the sound of his breath rattling in his chest. You can see it, the fever, the cold, the sickness, all taking hold of him. Another soldier, an older man, moves toward him, his face tight with concern. "Get him some water," he says to no one in particular. But no one moves. There's no water left. There hasn't been for hours. The boy's eyes close again, and his body relaxes, as if in surrender. You watch him, heart sinking, knowing what comes next. The cold takes so many, without mercy, without warning. You're too tired to cry. You're too cold to feel anything more than the ache of survival. But it doesn't stop the sadness that lingers, hanging heavy in the air, mingling with the frost. And then, like a distant memory, something strange happens. Through the howling winds and the biting cold, a sound drifts into the trench. A distant noise, faint but real. The sounds of someone coming closer. Your heart jumps into your throat, and you stiffen. The others hear it too. The soft crunch of boots in the snow. It's not the sound of an enemy soldier, not the steady rhythm of the enemy's march, but something different. Someone else. Someone unexpected. You try to push your thoughts into focus, to make sense of the strange sound. It's too far away to be another group of soldiers, but it's unmistakable. Someone's coming. You hold your breath. You wonder if it's a patrol sent to bring you supplies, or perhaps even a rescue party. But your hope flickers out as quickly as it arrives. You know better than to hope. Not in the cold, not in this place. And yet, still, you wait. The sound grows louder now, the crunch of snow turning to the steady, purposeful footsteps of something coming your way. You try to ignore the gnawing hunger in your belly, but it's hard. Bread is scarce, and what little you've been given is stale, dry, and hard to swallow. A handful of crusts might be all you get for the day, and that's if you're lucky. You make do with whatever can be scavenged, but even the soup is thin and flavorless, barely more than water, with a few scraps of meat floating in it. Your shelter for the night is a makeshift arrangement, a few wooden planks and a blanket of snow to shield you from the howling winds. You curl up with your fellow soldiers, huddling for warmth, but there's no escaping the cold. The night stretches on, each moment feeling like a test of endurance. Yet, despite it all, you hold on to the idea that the revolution is worth the sacrifice. It's this belief that keeps you alive, even as the elements threaten to pull you under. The hours drag on, each minute stretching into an eternity as the cold gnaws at your skin and your spirit. The thin blanket of snow you've managed to pull over you is no protection against the biting wind that slices through your clothes, as if nature itself has become your enemy. The shelter is little more than a cruel joke, barely enough to keep the wind off your face, but it's all you have. You feel the frost creeping into your bones, making every joint ache, every muscle sore from the relentless chill. You shift slightly, trying to find a less uncomfortable position, but it's useless. Your body has grown stiff from hours of lying in the frozen trench, the cold seeping into every part of you, even into your very thoughts. Sleep eludes you, too elusive to grasp, no matter how heavy your eyelids become. Every breath you take is shallow, labored, as if even the air is struggling to stay warm. The hunger is an ever-present ache, like a hollow pit in your stomach that refuses to be filled. You can't remember the last time you ate anything that didn't taste like dust, or when your stomach felt anything but empty. You try to push the thought of food away, but it's impossible. It's as though the hunger has taken on a life of its own, clawing at your insides, making it hard to think of anything else. A half-dried crust of bread, a few scraps of meat in thin broth. These are the offerings of survival, the bare minimum to keep your body alive, but your mind is growing weary. The weight of it all presses down on you. The cold, the hunger, the endless waiting, the fear that even if you do survive this, there might be no victory to see on the other side. You hear a soft murmur in the darkness next to you, one of the younger soldiers, Dmitri, his breath shallow and ragged. He shivers, his body trembling against the cold, and you wonder how much longer he can hold on. His face is pale in the faint light of the fire that flickers weakly at the edge of the trench. You glance over, seeing him clutching his coat tighter, his fingers digging into the fabric as if it could offer him warmth. But there's no comfort to be found here, only the hollow feeling that comes with surviving a battle against the elements. The fire is small, and the smoke makes your eyes sting, but it's something, a small dying ember that barely cuts through the endless cold. You can't remember the last time you had a real flame, the kind that could bring comfort or warmth to your bones. All you have is the knowledge that this fire, however small, is a reminder that you're not yet gone, that you're still here, still fighting against the cold, the hunger, the fear that the revolution will never be more than a dream buried in the snow. You shift again, your body refusing to obey, your muscles stiff with the cold, but the hunger gnaws louder now, a constant, insistent pressure. You try to remember what it was like to feel full, to not have to think about food every waking moment. It feels like a lifetime ago, before this long march. before the endless nights spent in the frost. Back then, you thought you knew what struggle was, but now, in the heart of this frozen wasteland, you understand. Survival is not just about staying alive, it's about holding on to the belief that something greater is waiting, even when every part of you wants to give in, to let the cold take over, to let the hunger claim you. You think about the revolution, about Lenin's speeches, and the promises of a new Russia, the idea that this struggle will lead to something better. It's hard to hold on to those thoughts in a moment like this, when every hour spent in the trench feels like an eternity. But you do. You have to. Your body is shutting down. Your mind struggling to stay sharp amidst the fatigue. But there's still a flicker of hope buried somewhere deep inside. You know that your comrades feel the same way. The fire that burns in each of you, despite the cold, despite the hunger, despite the endless days of fighting and waiting, it's what keeps you all going. It's a fragile thing, a flicker in the dark, but it's enough. Enough to keep you alive. Enough to keep you from giving up when the world feels like it's collapsing in on you. Dmitri's breath catches, and you can feel the tension in the air as the others in the trench stir, their heads turning toward the sound. For a moment, everything is still. The world outside this frozen trench seeming to pause in a collective breath. Then, as if waking from a trance, the sound of feet crunching on the snow grows louder. The unmistakable rhythm of soldiers moving through the cold. You look up, your body instinctively tensing, but it's not an enemy patrol. It's another group of Bolshevik soldiers, their faces hardened by the same cold and hunger, their eyes grim and distant. One of them, an older man you don't recognize, glances down at the fire, then back at the group. His voice is raspy, barely audible over the howling wind. "We keep moving at dawn," he says, his words barely more than a whisper in the cold. "No time to rest. We march." A quiet murmur runs through the trench, the soldiers slowly adjusting themselves, preparing for the next stage of the march. The fire crackles faintly, but it does little to soften the harsh reality of their situation. The younger soldiers exchange looks, tired, desperate looks that say it all. They're not ready to move. They're not sure they have it in them to keep going. But there is no choice. The revolution doesn't stop. The Bolsheviks don't stop. And neither can you. The cold stings your face as you rise from the makeshift shelter, your body groaning in protest, every muscle screaming for rest. You glance around at your fellow soldiers, their faces just as haggard, just as drawn with exhaustion and hunger. Yet, despite everything, they rise too, one by one, their movements slow and labored. But there is no hesitation. You stand together, bound by the cause, by the shared suffering of survival. And in this frozen moment, you know that despite it all, the cold, the hunger, the fear, you're not alone. There are others, just as weary, just as worn, and just as determined to see the revolution through. You move toward the fire, your hands shaking from both the cold and the weight of what's to come. The older man gestures for you to gather your things. "The march begins now," he says, his voice steady despite the weariness in his eyes. "We move, we fight, and we survive. That's all we can do." You nod, knowing the words are not meant to inspire, they're meant to keep you moving, to keep you from breaking down in the face of impossible odds. You force yourself to pick up your rifle, adjust the straps of your pack, and step forward into the biting cold. The night stretches on as you move. your steps heavy, your body trembling, but your spirit, faint as it may be, pushes you onward. The revolution is far from over, and neither is your fight. You march not just for the cause, but for the hope that one day, when the cold has finally subsided, when the hunger is no more, there will be something better waiting on the other side. But for now, all you have is the march, the cold, the hunger, the fire that burns in your chest, and the belief that survival is worth the sacrifice. The days blur into one another. You wake, eat what little you can, and fight against the freezing temperatures, fight against hunger, fight against your own body's desire to give in. It's hard to remember a time when you didn't feel this cold, this empty. But amidst all this, something keeps you going. It's not the promise of food or warmth, but the revolutionary fervor that burns within you. You fight not just for survival, but for a future that, in this moment, seems impossible to reach. But as you march, as you endure the winter's grasp, you know that the Bolsheviks won't be stopped, not by the cold, not by hunger, and not by anything else that comes their way. The days blur into one another, each indistinguishable from the last. The cold is a constant companion, one that gnaws at your every thought, every breath. It has become the rhythm of your life, an unrelenting force that dictates everything you do. You wake, only to find that the blanket of frost you slept under has seeped into your bones. You eat, if you can call it that, whatever scraps you've managed to scrape together, and then you march again, your footsteps heavy in the snow, each one a battle against the elements, against your own body's growing resistance to keep going. You fight against hunger, which is a beast that's always there, twisting in your stomach, reminding you of what's lacking, of what you'll never have enough of. The taste of stale bread, the thin, watery soup, it's all you've known for what feels like an eternity. The hunger is not just physical anymore. It's a hunger for something more, something beyond survival. It's a hunger for a future, for change, for a world where you don't have to endure this suffering, this endless cold. But the cold is everywhere, pressing in from all sides. The wind cuts through your ragged clothes, your skin raw and chafed from exposure. Your hands are stiff, frozen into shapes you can barely move. You've forgotten what it feels like to truly be warm. It's hard to imagine ever being comfortable again. But then you remember, this is what you're fighting for. You remind yourself that this cold is temporary, that there's something greater at stake. The revolution is not something that can be stopped by the weather, not by the hunger, not by the exhaustion that threatens to swallow you whole every time you close your eyes. This is what you signed up for, the fight for a future that might never come, a future where the people no longer have to suffer beneath the weight of tyranny, a future where you don't have to march through this snow with nothing but the bitter air to keep you company. The thought of the future keeps you going, keeps you from giving in. But even as the cold settles deeper into your bones, you can't help but question, what if it's all in vain? What if this struggle is nothing more than a cruel, endless cycle? What if you never see the victory that Lenin speaks of? The victory that promises a better world for everyone. But then you look around at your fellow soldiers. You see their faces, weathered by hunger, by fatigue, by cold, and you know they won't stop. They march, just like you, through the freezing nights, through the endless days, all driven by the same belief. The Bolsheviks won't be stopped, not by anything, not by the freezing winds, not by the empty stomachs, not by the fear that gnaws at the edges of their resolve. And so, you keep moving, because that's all you can do. You stumble forward through the snow, feeling your legs heavy, your body begging you to rest, to stop, to give in, but you can't. The others keep moving, and you must too. There's no time for weakness, no time to stop. As you march, the wind howls louder, a sound that echoes the tumult of your thoughts. The snow blurs in front of you, but you keep your gaze steady. You don't know where you're going or what awaits you, but the march goes on. Somewhere ahead, you hear the faint sound of a battle muffled by the storm, but unmistakable. The clash of metal, the cries of soldiers, the sharp reports of gunfire. Your heart pounds in your chest as you press on, pushing yourself toward the sounds. Another fight, another skirmish. The war continues, just as the cold continues to bite. But you have no choice. You can't afford to stop, not now. The revolution is coming, and you have to see it through. You pass by another soldier, a young man who's barely able to stand. He's staggering, his face pale and drawn, his eyes glazed over from exhaustion, but he keeps moving. There's something in his gaze, a spark of defiance, a reflection of the same fervor that drives you. He doesn't speak, doesn't acknowledge you, but you both know the same truth, that the cold, the hunger, the pain, it all fades in comparison to the belief that this fight is worth it. And so, you march on. The fire in your chest, though faint, is still there. It's the only warmth you have now, and you hold on to it as if it's your lifeline. You don't know if you'll make it to the end, but you know that the fight for a better world, for the future of Russia, is something worth dying for. The days stretch on, an endless march through a world of snow and ice. But you keep pushing forward, one step at a time, because that's what the revolution requires. It's not about the promises of food or warmth, not about the comfort of home or the safety of the past. It's about something greater, something that only those who have endured the worst can truly understand. And as the days blur into one another, as you fight to stay awake, to stay alive, you realize something that keeps you going, something that makes the bitter cold worth it. It's the knowledge that you are part of something bigger than yourself, that you are helping to create something new, a new Russia, a new world. Even in the depths of winter, when everything feels cold and impossible, there's a fire burning within you, no matter how faint it might be. And that fire is enough to carry you forward. The revolution won't stop, and neither will you. You step out onto the streets of Petrograd, and the world before you is a frozen landscape, a stark contrast to the political turmoil that has taken root in the city. The air is thick with frost, and the biting cold cuts through your coat as if it were paper. The streets, normally bustling with the rhythms of city life, are now lined with barricades. Makeshift walls of crates, wood, and stone rise up in the streets, the remnants of previous skirmishes. The streets are slick with ice, each step you take threatening to send you sprawling onto the frozen ground. People move cautiously, heads down, their breath visible in the icy air. You pass by the crowds, workers, soldiers, citizens of all kinds, each of them seeking warmth in their own way. Some huddled together by small fires, the orange glow barely enough to keep the cold at bay. Others trudge toward the safety of crowded homes, the flicker of a lamp visible through cracked windows. There's no real comfort to be found, no safe haven from the cold, just the desperate hope that you'll find something, anything that might stave off the numbing chill that has taken hold of the city. Everywhere you look, the cold has seeped into the very bones of the city. The stone buildings seem to shiver, their outlines blurred by the layers of frost clinging to their surfaces. Petrograd, once a symbol of imperial grandeur, now feels like a dying beast, its streets filled with the cold echoes of revolution and the ever-present threat of what's to come. The air smells of smoke, of burning wood and discarded materials, as the city scrambles for heat, for life, for survival. The city feels as though it's holding its breath, frozen in time and trapped between two worlds, the old, imperial Russia and the new, uncertain future that the revolution promises. You press on, your boots crunching against the ice, careful not to slip on the slick roads that have become as treacherous as the political landscape itself. The walls of the barricades loom over you, crude but effective, standing as a symbol of resistance in the face of overwhelming odds. They were hastily constructed, built with whatever materials could be found, and now they serve as both defense and prison, keeping the revolutionaries inside their makeshift sanctuaries while the rest of the city remains in flux. As you make your way through the streets, you notice the faces of the people around you haggard, cold, their eyes hollow with exhaustion and fear. The city's once proud citizens are now caught in the grip of hunger, deprivation, and fear, just like the soldiers they once depended on for protection. Some march with determination, others with a sort of resigned indifference, but all share the same sense of urgency. Everyone is moving somewhere, heading towards something: safety, warmth, the faint hope of survival, but none of it feels certain. You pass a group of workers gathered around a fire, their hands outstretched toward the flames as though trying to absorb whatever warmth they can. The fire crackles faintly, but it is a fragile thing, offering only brief moments of respite before the cold claws at their skin once more. Some of the men look up as you pass, their faces masked with the weariness of battle and survival, and their eyes seem to meet yours with an unspoken understanding, a shared recognition of the suffering and uncertainty that binds you all together. The women, too, have their own quiet resilience. You see them huddled in doorways or leaning against the frozen walls of buildings, clutching their children close, their faces drawn with both concern and determination. Their hands are cracked and red from the cold, but they move with purpose, walking quickly toward wherever they can find shelter. Their world has changed just as drastically as the men's, no longer the bearers of the family hearth, but now the fighters and survivors of a city on the brink of collapse. You feel a pang of sympathy for them. The cold is hard enough to endure alone, but to endure it with children, knowing that each step you take is one step closer to either warmth or the slow, inevitable death of starvation and exposure, it's too much. Yet, despite the desperation in their eyes, there's something else, something indefinable, flickering in the way they carry themselves. A strength, a resilience, born not just from the immediate need to survive, but from the belief that change, however distant, is on the horizon. As you continue your walk through the city, the distant sounds of gunfire erupt in the distance, breaking the fragile silence that has settled over the streets. The crack of gunfire, followed by the rattle of distant artillery, is both jarring and familiar. It reminds you that the revolution is still unfolding, that the streets are not yet quiet enough to breathe easy. The air hums with the tension of something unfinished, something that is moving toward a climax but has not yet reached its final act. The barricades ahead grow taller, and you realize you're approaching the heart of the conflict, where the fighting has become more intense, more desperate. You see soldiers in their heavy coats, their rifles slung across their backs, moving in and out of position, preparing for something, perhaps the final push, perhaps another skirmish. The tension is palpable, and for a brief moment, you can hear only the wind and the muffled sound of distant fighting. The cold is so thick here, so suffocating, that it feels as though the city itself might collapse under the weight of it all. You pause at the edge of the barricade, surveying the scene in front of you. The streets are lined with the remnants of past struggles, broken carts, discarded weapons, and the bodies of the fallen, all reminders of the price of revolution. The sound of voices fills the air, shouting orders, organizing the next steps, but it's hard to hear over the relentless wind. There's a palpable sense of dread here. No one knows how much longer they can hold out, how much longer the revolutionaries can survive on sheer will alone. You turn to see a soldier approaching you. He's young, his face streaked with dirt, his uniform tattered and patched. His eyes are wide with exhaustion, but there's still a fire behind them, a belief in what he's fighting for. He nods at you as he passes, his movements slow but determined. "We're not done yet," he says quietly, his voice barely audible over the wind. Not by a long shot. You watch him disappear into the crowd, his figure swallowed by the maze of barricades and streets. The words echo in your mind, "Not done yet." In this frozen city, where even hope seems to freeze in the cold, the revolution marches on through hunger, through fear, through the bitter cold of winter. The sound of distant gunfire grows louder now, and you realize that the siege of Petrograd is far from over. The barricades, the fires, the soldiers, all of it is just part of a larger struggle. A struggle that will continue as long as there is breath in your lungs, as long as there is hope in your heart. In the midst of this frozen landscape, where death feels so close and the future so uncertain, one thing remains clear. You will march on, not just for survival, but for the promise of something better. And though the cold is unrelenting, so too is the fire of revolution burning in your chest. The revolution is everywhere in Petrograd, and so is the cold. It wraps around every corner, every barricade, every street where the fighting has grown fiercer. It's impossible to tell what people fear more, the soldiers that patrol the streets with rifles, or the frostbite creeping into their limbs. The cold is a slow killer, one that works its way into the cracks of your skin, the tips of your fingers, your toes, and yet the revolutionaries march on, driven by the cause, by the promise of a new Russia, a new future. But each step you take feels heavier than the last. The hunger is sharp in your stomach, gnawing at you, and the cold makes every movement more difficult. The soldiers are not just a physical threat. They're a reminder that the revolution's victory is not guaranteed. Every time a gunshot rings out, it feels like the city itself trembles. The streets are no longer just filled with civilians and revolutionaries, they are filled with fear. Fear of what might happen next. Fear of the soldiers who patrol the streets, and fear of what this endless cold might do to your body. As you walk, the sounds of distant gunfire echo in the freezing air. The occasional shout or scream pierces through the silence, but for the most part, the city is muffled under the weight of snow and ice. Everyone moves with purpose. but there's a sense of urgency in the air that can't be ignored. The people are on edge, ready for another clash, another confrontation, but they are also fatigued, the cold wearing away at their resolve. You see it in the faces of the people around you: weariness, desperation, and a growing sense of fear. You push forward through the narrow, ice-coated streets, each step more difficult than the last. The sound of crunching snow beneath your boots is oddly loud in the silence, a constant reminder that you are moving through a city that is frozen not just in temperature, but in time. Petrograd feels like a place stuck between two worlds, one still clinging to the old imperial ways, and one fighting for the promise of something new, something better. Yet in the midst of it all, the cold threatens to claim everyone equally, indifferent to the ideologies they carry or the battles they fight. The revolutionaries move with a determined slowness, their faces hardened against the cold, their eyes fixed on some distant goal that seems as far out of reach as the fading sunlight. Each person looks as though they've been here for months, worn down by the bitter winds, by the constant hunger, by the strain of a war that offers no rest. The barricades around the city are a constant reminder of the walls between what was and what might be. You pass them, your breath visible in the frigid air, and wonder how long they can last, how long anyone can last in a place where every breath you take is colder than the last. You're not sure when it happened, the point when the revolution stopped feeling like something you could control and began to feel like something that was controlling you. It's as if the promise of a better future is now just a whisper, fading as quickly as the warmth from the fire you passed earlier. The cold has become so pervasive that it's hard to think of anything else. You try to remember what warmth feels like, but it's impossible. Even your dreams are cold now. The sounds of gunfire draw your attention again. They're closer this time, the crack of rifles and the sharp burst of explosions punctuating the eerie silence of the streets. You flinch with each sound, your heart thudding in your chest. The gunfire serves as a reminder that this isn't just a battle against hunger or cold, it's a battle for your life, for the life of the city. The revolutionaries, for all their courage, are not invincible. You know that better than anyone. Every street is another chance for something to go wrong, for another confrontation to erupt. But you can't afford to stop. The cold presses in harder now, and you can feel the frostbite creeping into your fingers, your toes painful, slow, and inevitable. You try to shake it off, but it doesn't help. The hunger gnaws at you, sharper now than ever, and your body grows weaker with each step you take. But still, you march. Your legs feel like lead, and your chest aches with every breath. But still, you march. The revolution has become something that transcends the body. It is no longer about comfort or survival, it is about endurance, about seeing something through to the end, even if that end is uncertain. The streets are filled with people now, workers, soldiers, and citizens alike. They walk with the same determined pace, though each step seems harder than the last. The streets, once a place of bustling energy and movement, are now an eerie silence, punctuated only by the sounds of hurried footsteps and distant gunfire. The air is thick with the scent of smoke from burning buildings, the remnants of past battles, and the occasional whiff of burning wood or coal. But there's no warmth here. The fires that had once kept the streets alight now only serve to remind you of what has been lost, of how far Petrograd has fallen in the months since the revolution began. You pass a group of women huddled together by a fire, their faces gaunt, their hands trembling as they try to warm themselves by the meager flame. They look up at you, their eyes filled with a mixture of hopelessness and determination. You can see the weariness in their eyes, the same exhaustion that you feel deep in your own soul. They say nothing as you pass, but you know they're fighting the same fight. You know they're as tired as you are, and yet they, too, keep moving, keep hoping. The soldiers who patrol the streets are no better off. They wear the same exhaustion on their faces, their movements sluggish, their eyes hollow from fatigue. The rifles they carry seem more like burdens than weapons, and their once proud uniforms are now tattered and frayed, barely enough to shield them from the cold. They march just as you do, but with none of the fervor they once had. They're not fighting for a cause anymore, they're just surviving, just getting through the day. And yet, every once in a while, their eyes flicker with the same spark of belief you once had. That spark that says, this is worth it. But how long can it last? You don't know. You don't know if the revolution will win or if the cold will take you first. You don't know if you'll make it through the night, much less the war. But you do know this. You can't stop. Not yet. Not when the fire still burns in the hearts of the people around you. When the barricades still stand as a testament to the hope that there can be something better. The sound of gunfire rings out again, closer this time. The streets seem to hold their breath as the tension rises. People look over their shoulders, eyes scanning the horizon for signs of movement, for signs that the enemy is coming. You join them, feeling your heartbeat quicken. You don't know if it's the cold or the fear, but your hands tremble as you tighten your grip on your rifle. Every movement feels like it could be your last, and yet you continue to move forward because that's all you know how to do. You march through the city, your legs heavy, your mind clouded by hunger and cold. The streets ahead blur, but the barricades grow taller, and you know you're getting closer to the heart of the conflict. The revolution is not over. It is not yet done. And no matter how hard the cold fights, no matter how much the hunger eats away at you, you will not stop. Not yet. You can feel it in your bones. The city is at the breaking point. The revolution has turned every street into a battleground, every building a fortress. The barricades are not just a symbol of resistance, they are a necessity for survival. You and the others are not just fighting against the Tsar's army, against the ruling class. You are fighting against the cold, the hunger, and the exhaustion that has settled into the heart of the city. Food is scarce, and what little there is comes at a steep price. People are trading anything they can, blankets, coats, even small valuables for a loaf of stale bread or a tin of soup. But even those who have something to eat are not immune to the cold. Every inch of warmth is a precious commodity, and everyone is struggling to hold on to whatever small piece of comfort they can find. You try to ignore the gnawing emptiness in your stomach, but it's impossible. Your body is growing weaker with each passing day, and your mind is starting to wander, searching for anything to cling to. But in the midst of it all, the revolution continues. The sounds of gunfire are constant now. Sporadic skirmishes break out in the streets, and the barricades are reinforced with whatever people can find. But the revolutionaries are not just soldiers, they are ordinary people, workers, peasants, and even the children who have been caught up in this struggle. They fight with the same intensity as the soldiers, fueled by the belief that the future will be better, that the suffering will be worth it. But as the cold grows stronger, as the hunger becomes harder to ignore, it becomes harder to hold on to that belief. The days feel like a blur. one indistinguishable from the next, each colder than the last. The frost that clings to the windows, the snow that piles up against the barricades, the hunger that gnaws at you, it's all becoming too much to bear. You can feel your body weakening, your limbs heavy, your movements slower. Every breath seems to take more effort, and the bitter cold seeps deeper into your skin, into your very bones. Your stomach growls in protest. But there's nothing to be done. What little food is left is rationed, carefully measured out in the hope that it will last. A small piece of bread here, a spoonful of watery soup there. People are getting desperate now. The faint hope that this will all be over soon is being replaced with a sense of dread. What if this is all there is? What if the revolution doesn't bring the change you hoped for, but instead leaves you to die in the streets of a city that no longer remembers what warmth feels like? You pass by a small group of revolutionaries huddled around a fire, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames, their breath coming out in visible puffs of vapor. They sit close, wrapped in whatever layers they can find, but even the fire offers little relief. It's barely enough to warm their hands, let alone their frozen bodies. The men and women around the fire are silent, each lost in their own thoughts, their own exhaustion. Some glance up at you as you walk by, but no words are exchanged. What is there to say? Everyone is fighting the same fight, enduring the same pain. The shared silence speaks volumes. You can't help but feel the weight of it all. This is not just about political change anymore. It's about survival. Every action is a fight. Every step is a struggle against forces that feel too strong to overcome. You push forward, not for glory, not for honor, but simply because there is no other choice. The revolution isn't some grand narrative that will be written about in the future. It's a series of brutal moments, fought one after the other, with each one demanding more than the last. The cold, the hunger, the constant fear of losing what little you have left. As you make your way through the streets, you pass another barricade, hastily thrown together with planks of wood and overturned carts. There are makeshift shelters built in the shadows, some with thin fires flickering behind crude walls. It's not much, but it's something to hold on to, something to fight for. You can feel the eyes of the revolutionaries watching you as you walk past. They're exhausted, worn thin by the endless days of struggle, but they're still here. They're still fighting. A shot rings out in the distance, followed by the sharp sounds of shouting. It's a reminder that the city is still very much in the grip of conflict. The soldiers, the czarist forces, the ones you've been fighting against, are closing in. Their presence in the streets is growing, and it's clear that the barricades alone may not be enough to keep them out. You hear the sounds of boots marching, the unmistakable sound of soldiers moving with purpose through the streets. You don't know if they'll attack tonight, tomorrow, or the next day. But you know one thing for sure: the struggle is not over. You find yourself standing at the edge of another street, looking down at the barricade that blocks your way. Your heart is heavy, your body on the verge of giving out. But you see it in the faces of those around you, the fire, the anger, the determination. Despite everything, they're still standing. They're still fighting. The cold has taken so much from you, and yet, you realize, it hasn't taken everything. Not yet. You turn your head, taking in the faces of the revolutionaries nearby, some soldiers, some workers, some women and children who have become caught up in this struggle. They've all been affected by the same hardships, the cold, the hunger, the fear, and yet they remain, pressing forward, you feel a spark of hope flicker in your chest, a fleeting moment of belief that maybe, just maybe, all of this will be worth it. But the hope is fleeting. The cold, the hunger, the constant fear, they all weigh too heavily on your mind. For every step you take forward, it feels as though you're being pulled back, sucked into the endless churn of suffering. You glance around again, at the faces of your comrades, and you see something that gives you the strength to keep going. It's not hope, not exactly. It's survival. The unspoken understanding that, despite the odds, you will not let go of what little you have left. The revolution is about more than political power. It's about surviving, about holding on to something, anything, in a world that seems determined to strip it all away. The barricades around you stand firm, a reminder of the resistance, of the struggle that continues despite everything. And you realize, as you stand there in the cold, that the revolution will not be defined by the battles fought in the streets or by the triumphs of soldiers or leaders. It will be defined by the resilience of the people, the ones who fight not just for change, but for survival. And you, like them, will continue on this path even if it leads to nothing more than a bitter end. Because the revolution is a battle you can never truly stop fighting. You turn your back on the barricade and keep moving, each step heavier than the last. The hunger gnaws at you, the cold cuts through you, but the fire in your chest, no matter how small, is still there. And as long as that fire burns, the revolution is not over. Not yet. The days stretch into weeks, and the city around you becomes more of a memory than a living, breathing place. Petrograd has been reduced to a shadow of itself, its once sturdy buildings now crumbling under the weight of both war and time. The streets, lined with abandoned carts and forgotten possessions, echo with the sounds of wind and distant shouts. Every corner you turn, you see the remnants of the people who fought and died here, their spirits lingering like a cold mist. You march through these desolate streets, each step a reminder of how far you've come, how much you've lost, and how little there is left to lose. The hunger gnaws at you, the cold digs deeper, and the weight of the revolution presses down like an unbearable burden. But still, you march. You march because, in this frozen city, it's the only thing you can do. To stop would be to give in. To stop would be to let the cold consume you entirely. You pass by another barricade, hastily thrown together but sturdy enough to hold off the enemy. The soldiers who stand guard are no different than you, exhausted, broken, and driven by a cause that no longer feels as hopeful as it once did. Their faces are pale from hunger, their eyes hollow from sleepless nights spent in the trenches, fighting not just for a new Russia, but for their very survival. They are men who have seen the brutality of war and lived to tell the tale, but each of them carries the scars of that struggle, both physical and emotional. The wind howls louder now, slicing through your thin coat, as though it's trying to tear you apart from the inside out. The cold is relentless, unforgiving, and it feels as though the city itself has become a part of the winter, frozen in time. You can't remember the last time you felt warmth, the last time you didn't feel the bitter sting of ice against your skin, but you keep moving, step by step, because you have no choice. The streets are lined with people, men, women, children, all marching, all walking with the same purpose, the same drive. They don't speak much anymore. There are no rallying cries, no cheers of defiance. The revolution, once fueled by passion and ideals, has been worn down by the cold, by the constant struggle to survive. But still, they march. They march because they believe in something, even if that something feels as distant and fleeting as the warmth of the sun on their faces. You catch the eye of a woman walking beside you. Her face is gaunt, her clothes ragged, but there's a fire in her eyes that refuses to be extinguished. She gives you a small nod, a silent acknowledgement that you're both in this together, that you're both fighting for the same thing, survival. You don't know her name, but it doesn't matter. In this frozen city, names don't matter. What matters is that you're still standing, still moving forward, no matter how much the cold tries to pull you down. The sound of distant gunfire snaps you back to the present. Your heart races as the cracks of rifles ring out through the city, a reminder that the revolution is far from over. The gunshots, like the cold, are a constant presence, always in the background, always reminding you that the fight continues, even if it feels like it's getting harder to see why. You march through the streets, your boots crunching in the snow, each step an effort. The cold is so deep now, so all-encompassing, that you feel it in your bones, in your very soul. The hunger, too, has become a constant ache, one you've learned to ignore, to push aside. But it's there, always gnawing at you. A reminder that this struggle is not just about defeating an enemy, it's about surviving the elements, surviving the toll that war has taken on every one of you. The barricades ahead grow higher, and you see the soldiers getting ready for another battle, another push to hold the city, to hold what little is left of it. You feel the tension in the air, the weight of what's about to happen. The revolution may have begun as a dream, but now it feels like a battle for mere survival. You take a deep breath, pulling the collar of your coat tighter around your neck, trying to shield yourself from the cold, but it's useless. The cold is inescapable, just like the fear, just like the hunger. But you can't stop. Not now. The barricades are not just walls of wood and stone, they are symbols of defiance, symbols of the people who refuse to give up, who refuse to surrender to the cold, to the hunger, to the fear. They are what stands between you and the end of this struggle, the end of the fight for something better, something new. You push forward, your footsteps heavy, your heart thumping in your chest. The cold nips at your skin, but the fire inside you burns brighter than ever. For a moment, you allow yourself to believe that this struggle will mean something, that the suffering you've endured, that the cold that has threatened to consume you, will lead to something better. The revolution may be stumbling, the cold may be closing in, but you know one thing for certain: you are not done yet. Neither are the others. And as long as there is still breath in your body, you will march, you will fight, you will survive. The sounds of gunfire pierce through the stillness of the frozen streets of Petrograd, mingling with the howling wind and the relentless crunch of snow beneath your boots. The city, already burdened by the weight of the revolution, now trembles beneath the clash of soldiers and revolutionaries. The once pristine snow, white and pure, is now stained with blood, a cruel reminder of the battle raging through the heart of the city. You move cautiously through the streets, your rifle slung over your shoulder, the cold creeping into your skin like an old enemy you've long since stopped fearing. The air is thick with tension as the sounds of fighting grow louder, closer. You know that at any moment, The White Guards could emerge from the shadows, guns drawn, ready to attack. The revolutionaries have fortified the barricades, but the enemy is relentless, and the cold offers no refuge. Every time you hear the crack of gunfire, your heart skips a beat. The streets are slick with ice, making every movement feel slow and deliberate. It's as though the snow itself is trying to hold you back, as though the earth itself has chosen sides in this conflict. But there's no time to hesitate. The revolution is here, and so is the battle. You push forward, knowing that each step could be your last. You turn a corner and catch sight of a group of revolutionaries, their faces grim and determined. They're moving quickly, their eyes scanning the streets for any sign of the enemy. The cold seems to have hardened them, just as it has hardened you. They are all just trying to survive, trying to make it through this frozen hell, one day at a time. You quicken your pace, the crunch of your boots in the snow now, a part of the symphony of destruction around you. The city, once full of life and pride, has become a battlefield. Its streets a maze of frozen chaos, littered with remnants of the clashes, discarded weapons, broken crates, blood-stained snow. The once stalwart buildings that had witnessed centuries of history now stand as silent sentinels to a city on the edge of collapse. They are no longer symbols of strength, but crumbling monuments to the suffering that has overtaken every corner of Petrograd. As you approach the barricades, you can feel the weight of them. They are more than just makeshift fortifications, they are symbols of defiance, the last stand against the forces that threaten to crush the revolution beneath their boots. The soldiers behind them are not just fighting for territory, they're fighting for survival. The enemy is everywhere, at the gates, in the streets, hidden in the shadows, and the cold is as much a part of the battle as the gunfire. You pull your collar tighter, but it does little to stop the chill seeping into your bones. A fellow revolutionary nods at you as you pass, his face grim but resolute. He's seen the horrors of this war just like you, but his eyes still hold the flicker of defiance. The fire that burns in the hearts of the revolutionaries can't be extinguished, not even by the relentless cold or the constant fear. There is a shared understanding among you all. The cold, the hunger, the constant threat of death, they're just the price of the revolution. And no matter how hard it gets, you will not stop. You will not surrender. You move deeper into the heart of the battle. The sound of gunfire is deafening now, mingling with the shouts and cries of the soldiers. The barricades are no longer just walls of wood and stone, they are walls of hope, held together by the strength and determination of those who have chosen to stand against the tide. The fighting is brutal, chaotic, and every inch of ground gained feels like a victory bought with blood and sacrifice. You take your position behind one of the barricades, the snow clinging to your boots, your hands trembling with cold and adrenaline. Your rifle feels heavier than ever, but you grip it tightly. The revolution is about survival now, survival of the body and survival of the spirit. Your breath comes in sharp gasps, each exhale forming a cloud in the icy air. You look over the barricade, watching the movement in the streets. The enemy is coming closer. They are relentless, their guns trained on anything that moves. A shot rings out, and you flinch, but it's not your turn yet. The revolutionaries, just like you, are taking cover, moving in calculated bursts from one position to the next. Every moment feels like a fight against time, against the elements, and against the fear that is creeping into your chest. You are exhausted, your body aches from the cold. your muscles burning from the strain of constant movement. But there is no time to rest, no time to feel sorry for yourself. You hear someone shout, "Incoming!" And before you can react, there's a flash of movement, a burst of gunfire from the enemy, and the world around you explodes in chaos. You dive to the ground, instinctively covering your head, your heart pounding in your chest. The battle has reached its peak. The revolutionaries, desperate and determined, are holding their ground. But the cost of survival is steep. You can feel the heat of the gunfire even from behind the barricades, the crack of bullets and the explosion of shells rattling the air. The cold has never felt more dangerous. Every movement, every breath is more difficult as the city seems to collapse around you. The revolution may have started with ideals, with hope for a better future, but now it is a war for survival, a war where the strongest will endure and the weakest will be left behind in the snow. You watch as one of your comrades, a young man barely old enough to hold a rifle, falls to the ground. His face is pale, his eyes wide in shock, and you can see the blood spreading in the snow around him. You want to rush to him, to help, but there's no time. The enemy is closing in, and the barricades are all that stand between you and them. The cold seeps into your bones, and you know that for the men on the front lines, the cold is as much of a killer as the enemy's bullets. You take a deep breath, steadying yourself, knowing that the fight isn't over. There's no room for fear, not now. The revolution must survive. You can't afford to stop. You can't afford to hesitate. The young man who fell his sacrifice, his blood, is a part of this fight. You move, you reload, you take aim, and you keep fighting. The revolutionaries fight not just for freedom, not just for a new Russia. They fight for each other, for the hope that somehow, against all odds, this battle will be won. Gunfire rings out again, but this time, it's not a warning shot. It's real. You fire back, the recoil jarring through your arm, the noise deafening in the cold air. You can feel the adrenaline coursing through your veins, your body screaming for rest, but you keep pushing forward. The sound of battle is all around you, the cold seeping in deeper, but you do not falter. Not yet. Not until the revolution is won. You keep moving, your boots crunching in the snow as you march deeper into the heart of the battle. The air is thick with smoke and the bitter scent of blood, mingling with the cold that stings your skin like 1,000 needles. The sound of gunfire is constant now, a rhythm that echoes through the streets like a dark song of war. You don't look back at the wounded soldier. There's no time for that. There's no time for anything but the next step, the next breath, the next fight. The barricades ahead are growing taller, built from whatever the revolutionaries can find. Crates, scrap wood, even abandoned wagons, anything to hold the line. You approach one of them, feeling the sharp bite of the wind cut through your thin coat. You pause for a moment, pressing your back against the makeshift wall, trying to steady your breath. You know what's coming. The white guards are pushing forward, their soldiers relentless, closing in on the city with every passing hour. But the cold doesn't care about strategies or tactics. It doesn't care about the revolution or the soldiers who fight for it. The cold is here, and it is just as deadly as any rifle. You can feel it creeping into your body, turning your fingers numb, freezing the tips of your ears and nose, making every breath feel like it's coming from somewhere far away. The cold is a constant companion, always present, always there to remind you of how fragile your body is in this world of ice and war. The man beside you, a grizzled veteran of the front lines, glances at you, his face hard with determination, but his eyes reveal the toll this fight has taken on him. His uniform is caked with snow, his face haggard from days of sleeplessness and hunger. He's seen it all, the bloodshed, the death, the constant barrage of gunfire, but even he is struggling now. The cold has a way of breaking even the toughest of men. It wears you down slowly, relentlessly, until there's nothing left but the fight to survive. "We can't hold much longer," he says, his voice barely above a whisper, his breath fogging in the air. "The White Guards are coming, and if we don't hold the line, Petrograd will fall." You nod, but you don't speak. What is there to say? The revolution has come this far, but it feels as if the end is always just out of reach. You're not sure what you're fighting for anymore. Is it the promise of a better future? Or is it just to stay alive for another day? The line between the two has blurred, and you're not sure you know the difference anymore. A loud explosion rocks the ground beneath you, sending a shockwave through the barricade. You brace yourself, but there's no time to recover. The sound of marching boots grows louder, closer. The White Guards are coming, their presence unmistakable in the thick silence that follows the blast. You grip your rifle tighter, trying to steady your breath, trying to prepare for the next wave. But the cold is making everything harder. Your hands feel like blocks of ice, your muscles stiff from exhaustion, and your mind is starting to fog over, worn thin by the hunger and the fear. Another gunshot rings out, and you turn just in time to see one of your comrades fall. He drops to the ground with a sickening thud, the snow around him turning crimson. You don't have time to process it. You don't have time to mourn. The battle is here, and it's all-consuming. You hear the shout of a commander, a call to hold the line, to push forward, but your body feels heavier with each passing second. You're not sure how much longer you can keep going. The pain in your legs is unbearable. Your head is spinning, and the cold is clawing at you from the inside out. You move forward anyway, because there's no other choice. The barricade is all that stands between you and the enemy, and you can't let it fall. Not now. Not after everything that has been sacrificed. The revolution is no longer about lofty ideals, about promises of a better tomorrow. It's about survival. It's about standing your ground, no matter the cost. The cold, the hunger, the exhaustion, they don't matter anymore. They are simply things to endure, things to survive. Another explosion rips through the air, and you are thrown to the ground. The world spins, and for a moment, everything is a blur of white snow, smoke, and chaos. You shake your head, trying to clear the fog from your mind, trying to push yourself to your feet. The sounds of battle grow louder, closer shouting, gunfire, the steady drum of footsteps that are approaching fast. You rise, stumbling for a moment as your legs refuse to cooperate, but then you see it an opening. The barricade has been breached. The White Guards are pushing through, and you know this is it. This is the moment the revolution either stands or falls. You grip your rifle tighter, your heart pounding in your chest, your breath coming in shallow gasps. There's no room for hesitation, no time for fear. You move forward, your body screaming in protest, but you keep moving. You push through the fear, the cold, the hunger. The revolution is on the line, and you will not let it fall. Not without a fight. The barricades are a fragile defense against the enemy's advance, but it's all that stands between you and utter defeat. The men stationed here are worn thin, their weapons tight in their grip, but their faces slack with exhaustion. You exchange a quick glance with one of them, a fellow revolutionary whose name you don't even know anymore. His eyes speak volumes, hollow, distant, but still focused on the immediate danger ahead. You nod, acknowledging the shared understanding that this is no longer about politics or ideology. This is about surviving until the next dawn, if it ever comes. The wind cuts through your coat like a blade, but you barely feel it anymore. Your body is numb from the cold, your limbs stiff and unresponsive. The snow around you is stained with the blood of your comrades and the enemy alike, and the smell of it is sharp in the air, mingling with the acrid scent of gunpowder. The ground beneath your boots is slick with ice, each step more difficult than the last. But you keep moving. There is no other option. You hear a faint groan from one of the wounded soldiers lying nearby. His body is half buried in snow, his face frozen in a grimace. He's barely recognizable, his eyes wide and vacant, the faintest trace of life still clinging to him. For a moment, you feel a pang of guilt, the instinct to help, to save him, but it fades almost immediately. There's no time for that. The cold will claim him soon enough, just as it claimed so many others. You can see the frost creeping up his exposed skin, his breath slowing with each passing minute. You force yourself to look away, to focus on the task at hand. The barricade ahead is your responsibility now, and it's crumbling under the weight of the enemy's assault. You can hear the distant rumble of their approach, the sound of boots crunching in the snow, the sharp click of rifles being loaded. You don't know how long you'll last here, but you know that if you don't fight now, you won't make it through the night. The men at the barricade are shaking, their movements jerky and sluggish, but they're still holding their ground. You join them, your heart pounding in your chest, your rifle raised to your shoulder. You can barely keep your focus, your thoughts clouded by the cold, by the hunger, by the knowledge that there's no guarantee of victory. But there's no time for doubt. The enemy is closing in. The gunfire is deafening now. The crack of bullets splitting the air, the sound of bodies hitting the ground, and the sudden rush of adrenaline that surges through your veins. The world narrows to the space between you and the enemy, to the rhythm of each shot you fire, to the desperate hope that somehow, despite the odds, you'll survive. The barricade trembles as the enemy's gunfire intensifies, and you hear a sharp shout from one of the men. He's pointing toward the distance, his face etched with panic. The enemy is advancing, pushing forward with ruthless determination. You can see their shadows moving through the smoke, their rifles raised, their movements sharp and coordinated. They are not here for peace. They are here to end this struggle, to crush the revolution beneath their boots. You fight with everything you have left, your strength, your resolve, your will to survive. But it's getting harder. The cold is unbearable now, creeping into your very soul, freezing you from the inside out. The hunger gnaws at you, making it hard to focus. But you can't stop. You have to keep fighting. The revolution, despite everything, has to continue. The men beside you are falling one by one, their bodies crumpling to the ground, their lives snuffed out in an instant. You feel a surge of anger, but it's quickly replaced by the grim reality that you're fighting not just for the revolution, but for your own survival. If you stop, if you falter, You will be one of them, and the cold will claim you, just as it claims the others. You take a deep breath, steadying yourself, and prepare for the next wave. The sounds of gunfire and shouting fill the air, the cries of the wounded mixing with the shouts of orders. The barricade is beginning to crumble, the wood splintering under the pressure. You know it won't hold much longer, but you don't stop. You can't. You press forward. Each shot fired a reminder that as long as you are still alive, the revolution lives too. But the cold is still there, a constant presence at your back, in your lungs, in your very bones. It's more than just the weather now. It's a part of the fight, a part of the revolution itself. As the enemy closes in, you realize that the true battle is not just for a new Russia, it's for the will to endure, to survive, and to push through the brutal cold and despair that have taken hold of the city. The future is uncertain, but in this moment, you know you must fight for it. You must fight to keep the fire of the revolution alive, even if it flickers weakly against the harsh winds and freezing temperatures. And so you stand your ground, the weight of the rifle heavy in your hands, the fire of defiance burning in your chest, and the bitter cold pressing in from all sides. You won't stop. You can't stop. The revolution depends on it. The gunfire is relentless now, echoing through the streets with a steady rhythm that matches the beating of your heart. Every time you hear the crack of a shot, you feel it in your chest, as if it's your own life that is at risk. You can hear the soldiers of the White Guards closing in, their voices raised in a battle cry, their rifles ready to strike. But it doesn't matter anymore. You're too far into this fight to turn back. You can feel the weight of the revolution on your shoulders, the weight of the people's hopes and dreams resting on the shoulders of men and women who are just trying to survive, just trying to make it to the next hour. The next day, you turn to face the barricade, the makeshift wall that has become your refuge, your protection from the enemy. The snow continues to fall, blanketing everything in its cold embrace. But for a moment, you forget about the hunger, the fatigue, the fear. All that matters now is the fight. The revolution has become a part of you, just as the cold has become a part of this city. You grip your rifle tighter, your knuckles white against the worn wood. The cold no longer feels like an enemy. It feels like a part of the revolution itself. The freezing winds, the endless snow, the blood-soaked streets, it's all become one. This is the cost of change. This is what it takes to fight for something better. The fight isn't over yet. You still have to survive, still have to hold the barricade, still have to fight against everything that this war is throwing at you. But as long as you're alive, as long as you're still standing, you know that the revolution will continue. It will survive, just like you. And so you stand, you fight, you endure. The gunfire never stops. It's like a heartbeat that never slows, a constant reminder that the battle is far from over. You tighten your grip on the rifle, feeling the cold steel bite into your frozen fingers. The sound of the White Guard's battle cry echoes through the street, and you can almost feel the ground tremble beneath your feet as they advance. The barricade before you seems too small, too fragile, but it's all that stands between you and them. You know that the moment it falls, the battle will spill into the streets, and there will be no retreat, no safe haven. The snow continues to fall, thick and heavy, blanketing everything in its path. It hides the blood-soaked ground, the broken bodies of your comrades who fought valiantly. only to be claimed by the cold or the enemy's fire. You can't afford to dwell on them. Not now. You have to keep your focus, keep your body moving, keep your mind sharp. The cold numbs your senses, but the sound of the gunfire, the cries of the fallen, and the beat of your own heart are a constant reminder that you're still alive. You're still fighting. You hear a shout to your left. One of your comrades is down. You don't look over. You can't afford to. The moment you take your eyes off the enemy, you're done. But the weight of the loss presses on you, a weight you cannot shake. Every death, every loss, makes it harder to keep going, harder to hold on to the belief that the revolution will bring anything more than more suffering. But you can't let yourself think that. Not now. Not when the barricade is buckling, when the enemy is pressing in from all sides. The wind howls, a banshee's scream that rips through your clothes and bites into your skin. But it's nothing compared to the agony of your stomach, the hollow, gnawing emptiness that threatens to break you. You haven't eaten in days. What little food there was has long since been used up. You try to push the hunger aside, to focus on the task at hand, but the feeling is always there, clawing at you, reminding you of the cost of this fight. And then, the sound of footsteps, distant at first, but growing louder with each passing second. They're coming. The white guards are nearly here. The barricade will fall soon, you know it. You steel yourself for the onslaught, knowing that there's nothing left to do but fight. Your comrades are behind you, their eyes hollow with fatigue, but their hands are steady, their rifles raised. They may be tired, but they are still here, still willing to die for this cause. You wonder if you're the same. Are you still fighting for the revolution, or are you just fighting to survive? It doesn't matter. The moment of choice is gone. The enemy is almost upon you. You can hear their voices now, shouting, rallying, urging each other forward. You glance over at the barricade, the wood splintering under the pressure. You feel the vibrations in the ground as they push against it, the sheer force of their advance. Your comrades hold their positions, firing back with precision. But it's clear they can't hold for much longer. The barricade is weakening. The enemy is closing in, and the cold is relentless, numbing every part of you. The thought crosses your mind. Maybe this is the end. Maybe we won't survive this. But you don't let it show. You can't. The revolution needs to see you fight, even if it's your last fight. You squeeze your rifle tighter, your breath shallow from the cold, your muscles aching from exhaustion. You stand your ground, because that's what's left. No retreat, no surrender. The barricade shudders as another round of gunfire slams into it, and the wood splinters under the weight of the assault. The white guards are almost here. Your hands shake as you load your rifle, the motion automatic, the process as familiar as breathing. You don't think, you just act. Your heart pounds in your chest as the sound of footsteps grows closer, the anticipation of battle closing in on you. Then, it happens. The barricade gives way. The first wave of soldiers charges through, their rifles raised, their faces cold and determined. You fire, and the gunshot feels like an eternity, the recoil jarring through your arm. You aim again, and another enemy soldier falls. But there's more. There are always more. The fighting spills into the street, a chaotic frenzy of gunshots and shouts. The cold is suffocating, the air thick with the smell of blood and smoke. But the world has narrowed to a single, brutal moment, the fight to survive, the fight for the revolution. You don't know how long you last, minutes, hours, days, it all blurs together in the chaos of battle. You lose track of who is still standing, who has fallen. The enemy presses on, relentless, but so are you. You know the barricade is falling, but you don't stop. You can't stop. Not when you've come this far, not when so much has already been lost. The revolution is not about the cause anymore. It's about survival. It's about holding on to something, anything, that gives you the strength to keep going. As the battle rages around you, as you fight for every inch of ground, you realize this isn't just about a new Russia. It's about the people, about the men and women who stand with you, who fight with you, even in the face of death. You don't know if the revolution will win. You don't know if you will survive. But for this moment, for this battle, it doesn't matter. You stand. You fight. You endure. The sound of gunfire is fading now, and the cold air is filled with a different kind of silence, one that lingers heavily, like the weight of a battle that has been fought to its bitter end. The revolution has reached its climax, and victory is within reach. The Bolsheviks are gaining control of Petrograd, the heart of the revolution, but the city bears the scars of months of conflict. The barricades that once stood as symbols of resistance now lie broken and battered, their remnants strewn across the streets. The air is thick with smoke, and the ground beneath you is soaked with the blood of those who fought, both the revolutionaries and the soldiers who tried to quell their uprising. The victory you fought so hard for is close, but it feels hollow. The revolution that once burned bright with the promise of change now feels like a distant memory, overshadowed by the unrelenting cold and the sacrifices made along the way. The winter has not been kind to Petrograd, and as you stand on the precipice of victory, you realize that the cost has been far greater than you imagined. Your body aches, your face is numb from the cold, and the hunger that has gnawed at you for so long still lingers in your gut. Victory is near, but it is tainted by the toll this long, brutal winter has taken on you, your comrades, and the city itself. The wind howls through the shattered streets, cutting across your face like a knife. You pull your coat tighter, but it offers little protection. The cold is as relentless as the enemy you've just fought. The echo of distant gunfire still lingers in the air, but the sharp sounds of battle are fading, replaced by the groans of a city worn thin, gasping for breath after the storm of violence. The barricades are crumbling, half destroyed, their once proud stands of defiance now little more than ruins scattered across the snow. The ground beneath your boots is slick with blood and ice, the wet patches staining the snow crimson, a stark contrast to the once pristine landscape that seemed to carry hope in the early days of the revolution. But now, as victory inches closer, the cost of this victory becomes clearer with every breath you take. The bodies of the fallen lie forgotten, covered by a thin layer of snow, their faces twisted in pain, their lives snuffed out before the revolution could even catch fire. Men you once fought alongside, comrades who had stood firm with you through months of cold and hunger, now lie still, their bodies frozen in place. It's a hard truth that you try to swallow. In the end, it's not the enemy who has taken the most from you, but the revolution itself. The very cause you fought for has claimed more than you ever imagined it would. You stand amidst the wreckage, the remnants of battle, feeling the weight of it all. The hunger gnaws at your insides, relentless, a sharp reminder of how far you've been pushed. The cold, too, is an enemy you can't escape. It seeps into your bones, a constant ache, and as you try to push it aside, you feel it in every movement. The warmth of victory is a distant thought, clouded by the reality of the destruction around you. You move through the streets, passing by the hollow-eyed faces of the survivors, men and women who, like you, have endured this nightmare for far too long. They walk with slow, heavy steps, their faces gaunt, their eyes hollow from days of fighting and sleepless nights. The city has become a shell of itself. The once bustling streets of Petrograd now seem eerily silent, as though the city itself is holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable collapse that seems to be just around the corner. The revolution has changed everything, but it hasn't brought the relief that you had hoped for. There is no celebration, no cheering crowds, no sense of triumph. The air is thick with the stench of death and the sourness of failure, of a victory that feels more like a bitter pill than a sweet reward. You pass by makeshift shelters where revolutionaries huddle together, their faces weary, their spirits defeated. There are no cheers, no banners waving in the wind. The only sound is the rustling of clothes and the occasional cough of someone too sick to fight any longer. You've lost count of how many comrades have fallen, how many people have been claimed by the cold, by hunger, by wounds that will never heal. The city, once full of hope and passion, now feels like a graveyard, a place where dreams went to die, buried under the weight of this unrelenting winter. The revolution you fought for, the one that promised freedom, equality, and a better future, now feels like a distant dream. It's as though the promise of a new Russia has been swallowed up by the very forces it sought to overthrow. You can't shake the feeling that, in the end, the cost was too high. The bodies, the shattered barricades, the frozen streets, they all bear witness to what has been lost. The people may have risen up in the name of change, but what has that change brought them? A city that is nothing more than rubble and snow, and a future that seems as bleak as the horizon stretching before you. You stop for a moment, catching your breath. Your body feels like it's falling apart, your legs ache, your fingers are stiff, and the hunger claws at your gut. You look around at the faces of those still standing, the survivors, and you wonder how long they'll last. How long will you last? The winter continues to bear down on you, the weight of it all pressing in from every side. The revolution may have been won, but victory feels hollow when the cost has been so great. You wonder if this is what it was all for, the blood, the pain, the loss. The revolution may have succeeded in its political goals, but it has left scars on everyone who fought for it, and those scars may never heal. The wind howls once more, and you begin to walk again, not knowing where you're headed. The battle is over, but the struggle is far from finished. The city is in ruins, the people are broken, and the cold still gnaws at you from every side. You move forward because there's no other choice. The revolution may have given you a victory, but it has also taken something from you that you can never get back. Victory, you realize, has its own price, a price that may be higher than you ever imagined. The fighting has stopped, but the battle is far from over. You've won the city, but the cold hasn't relented. It presses in on every side, a constant reminder that survival doesn't stop with the end of the fighting. The snow continues to fall, blanketing the streets in white, hiding the bloodstains that mark the aftermath of war. The revolution may have succeeded in its political goals, but the physical toll on the people of Russia is undeniable. The streets are filled with the wounded, those whose bodies have been broken by months of fighting, freezing temperatures, and exhaustion. Their eyes are hollow, their faces gaunt, their bodies weak from hunger. There is no celebration, no cheers of triumph. The victory has come at too steep a price. The living conditions are dire. The homes are cold. The fires are scarce. And food is even more scarce. The people of Petrograd, once proud and resilient, now huddle together in the dark, doing their best to survive the harsh winter that shows no sign of easing. The Bolsheviks may have taken control of the city, but the true cost of that victory is something no one can ignore. The revolution has left its mark on the city, not just in the bloodshed, but in the very souls of those who fought for it. You can see it in the faces of your comrades, in the vacant eyes of those who once believed in the cause. The winter's aftermath is not just physical, it's emotional too. The city, now in the grips of its victory, is a shell of what it once was. Petrograd is no longer a place of bustling activity or ambition. It is a place of survival. The triumphant banners that once fluttered in the wind are now tattered remnants, weighed down by the snow, as if even the colors of the revolution have been dulled by the unrelenting cold. The streets that were once alive with the spirit of change are now desolate, filled with the quiet hum of a population drained, physically and emotionally. You walk through the streets, your footsteps muffled by the heavy snow, the muffled sound almost eerily serene compared to the chaos that was here only days ago. But even in this silence, you feel the weight of the aftermath. The bodies of the fallen have been removed, but the scars remain. The broken buildings, the shattered windows, the empty homes, each one tells the story of a fight that left more than just physical destruction behind. The hunger gnaws at you, but it's not the worst of it. It's the cold, relentless, and suffocating that steals the strength from your limbs and the clarity from your thoughts. Even the few fires that remain barely offer warmth. The fuel is scarce, and there's little left to burn. People gather around the small flames, huddling together for whatever heat they can find. But the warmth doesn't last. It is fleeting, like the hope that once seemed within reach. You think of the long nights spent without food or fire, the endless days where the only thing that kept you going was the promise of a new future, a future that now feels uncertain, at best. The wounded are everywhere, those who fought bravely for the revolution but are now left to suffer in silence. They sit in corners, slumped in doorways, their eyes vacant, as if they have seen too much to ever look ahead again. They are not just physically broken. The fight has taken something from them deeper than flesh and bone. The cold has worked its way into their hearts, numbing them to the world around them. You see it in their faces, the disbelief, the exhaustion, the loss. Even as the revolution has been won, they seem to wonder if it was worth it. You pass by one of the makeshift shelters, where a woman thin and frail sits by a small fire, her child in her arms. The child is silent, too still for comfort, and you can tell at a glance that the mother is doing everything she can to protect the last piece of her humanity from the world around her. You wonder briefly how long they'll last. The woman's face, though soft, is hardened by the reality of this new world. She doesn't speak to you. There's no need. You see it in her eyes, the same feeling you carry. Survival, nothing more. There are no heroes in the streets of Petrograd anymore. There is no pride. There is no joy in what was achieved. The revolution promised freedom, but all it has brought is hardship. The ideals that once fueled the fight for change now seem so distant, so disconnected from the reality of what is left. The empty stomachs, the broken bodies, the frostbitten limbs, these are the results of the revolution. There is no glory in these wounds, only the cold, grinding truth that survival is all that matters now. You find yourself wondering if the cost was worth it. The revolution was supposed to bring a better life, a future of freedom and equality. But what good is freedom when it feels like the world is closing in around you, when the streets are filled with survivors who are too broken to care about ideals anymore? What good is equality when the hunger and cold have leveled everyone to the same desperate state of survival? And yet, as you walk through the ruins of the city, you see it the faintest flicker of something. It's in the eyes of the people, the survivors, the ones who have made it through this brutal winter. They are weary, they are broken, but they are still standing. The revolution may have taken everything from them, everything they thought they would gain, but it hasn't taken away their will to survive. It hasn't taken away their hope, however dim it may seem. Perhaps that is what the revolution has given them, the ability to endure, the will to fight, to stand up, to keep moving even when there is no light at the end of the tunnel. In this cold, barren city, there is little left to fight for. But the revolution lives in the hearts of the people, in the quiet strength of those who keep going, even when they feel like they cannot. It's in the way they hold their heads up as they march forward, as they rebuild, as they endure the hardship. The price has been high, too high, but the revolution, in its own way, has succeeded. And as long as the people still stand, as long as they keep surviving, there will always be the possibility of a better future. Even in the bitter cold, even in the bleakest of moments, there remains that small flicker of hope. It's not much, but it's enough. It has to be enough. As you sit huddled around a small fire, the flames flickering weakly against the cold, you can't help but reflect on the cost of this victory. The revolution may have been won, but the cost is steep, too steep, perhaps. The bodies of the fallen are scattered across the city, their lives snuffed out in the name of a cause that promised a better future. But now that the fighting is over, you realize that nothing feels the way it should. The promise of a new Russia, a brighter tomorrow, feels like a distant dream. The cold still gnaws at your bones, and the hunger still claws at your insides. The future may be uncertain, but one thing is clear. The revolution has taken more than it gave. You look around at the survivors, the few who remain, their faces as tired and hollow as yours. They sit in silence, the weight of the winter, the war, and the countless losses too much to bear. No one speaks of the victory, no one cheers or celebrates. There is no joy in what has been achieved, only the grim realization that this war has left its mark on everyone. The revolution is no longer a beacon of hope. It's a harsh reminder of what has been sacrificed in the name of change. The people of Russia may have achieved their political goals, but the emotional and physical scars of this struggle will last far longer than the victories. The fire crackles in the quiet night, its flickering light casting long shadows across the room where you and the others sit, huddled close for warmth. The warmth is fleeting, just a small comfort in a world that feels unrelenting. The flames dance, but the cold outside is more powerful, seeping into the bones of the city, into the hearts of its people. You watch the fire with a vacant stare, your mind drifting to the faces of those who didn't make it, those whose bodies lie buried in the snow or left behind in the streets, forgotten. Their dreams, their sacrifices, now reduced to nothing but memories and ashes. You glance around at the others seated near you, their faces etched with exhaustion and sorrow. Their eyes are dull, their bodies worn and frail, just like yours. They are survivors, yes, but what have they survived for? What future awaits them after all this? The cold is still here, biting, relentless, and the hunger gnaws at their insides just as it does yours. For a moment, the thought crosses your mind, was it worth it? Was the revolution worth the suffering, the loss, the pain? Was the future promised worth the price paid in blood, sweat, and tears? No one speaks. There is nothing left to say. The celebration of victory feels like a distant memory, one that was never really within reach. It's hard to celebrate when the streets are still filled with the bodies of the fallen, when the living can barely hold onto the hope of a better tomorrow. The revolution was supposed to bring change, to bring a brighter future, but all it has brought is more darkness, more hardship. You wonder if the people who dreamed of this new Russia ever imagined it would feel like this, a place where victory tastes bitter and survival is the only thing that matters. You reach for the small ration of bread that was passed around earlier, your fingers numb from the cold, and take a bite. It's stale, hard, almost tasteless, but you eat it anyway, because it's all there is. The hunger never truly goes away, even when you've eaten. It lingers in the pit of your stomach, a reminder of the weeks and months spent without enough, a reminder of how little the revolution has truly given you. A few of the others around the fire stir, but they don't talk. Their faces are set in quiet resignation, their eyes fixed on nothing in particular, as though they, too, are lost in their thoughts, wondering how it all went wrong. Wasn't this supposed to be different? Weren't you supposed to be building something better? Instead, you've built a broken city, a cold, hollow shell of what it once was. The walls around you are crumbling. The city itself feels like it's falling apart, and all that's left are the hollow echoes of a battle fought for something that may never come. A gust of wind outside shakes the windows, and you can hear the faint sound of distant shouting, the last remnants of a struggle that has left the city scarred. The battle may be over, but the war is far from finished. The revolution may have claimed the streets, but it hasn't claimed the hearts of the people. How can it, when the cost of the fight has been so high? The silence grows heavier as the cold presses in, and you can't help but wonder how much longer this will go on. How much longer can you survive in a world that has promised so much and delivered so little? Will the revolution finally bring what it promised? Or will it continue to strip away everything you have left, until there's nothing but the cold, the hunger, and the empty streets? As the fire flickers one last time before it dies down, you feel something else, a quiet sense of determination, even in the face of all the loss. The revolution may have claimed more than it gave, but there is still something within you that refuses to die. You fought too long, lost too much, to let it all slip away now. The future is uncertain, but one thing is clear. As long as you are still breathing, as long as there is still fight left in you, you will keep going. You will keep surviving, because that is what the revolution has become, about survival. Not for ideals, not for glory, but for the chance to keep moving, to keep pushing forward, no matter what the cost. The fire dies completely, but you don't move. You sit in the dark, the silence pressing in around you, but somehow you find the strength to stand again. You have no choice. There is nothing left to do but keep going, and keep believing, if only just a little, that the future may, someday, bring the change you fought for. The streets of Petrograd are eerily quiet now, the sound of battle replaced by the steady hum of everyday life. But it's a life that has been forever altered. The revolution has won, but in its wake lies a city broken and weary, its people forever changed. You can't help but wonder if it was all worth it. The cold, the hunger, the deaths. It all seems too high a price to pay for the future that is still so uncertain. But even as you question it, you know that there is no turning back. The revolution has reshaped everything, and now you, and those who fought beside you, must face the aftermath. You glance around at the survivors, the men and women who are still here, still standing. They're broken, yes, but they're still here. The fire of revolution still burns in their eyes, though it flickers weakly, struggling against the cold that surrounds them. The battle may be over, but the fight is not. The struggle for a better future continues, not on the streets of Petrograd, but in the hearts and minds of those who live to see it. The cost has been steep, but the revolution has left its mark. And as long as the people remain, so too does the revolution. You stand and walk through the streets, the snow still falling, the wind still biting. The revolution may have won, but it has left its scars. You are one of those scars etched into the soul of a city, a nation that will never be the same. The fight is far from over, but for now, all you can do is survive. Because the cost of survival, like the cost of the revolution, is something that you must endure. As you walk through the quiet streets of Petrograd, the weight of it all presses down on you. The silence is unsettling, not the peaceful stillness you might have once imagined after victory, but a heavy, suffocating quiet that hangs in the air, as if the city itself is holding its breath. The buildings that once stood proud now appear worn and tired, their windows shattered, their facades cracked and faded by months of struggle. The streets, too, are scarred, covered in snow, but beneath it, the bloodstains and remnants of battle still linger, silent witnesses to the cost of this revolution. The people you pass are not the same. There are no victorious shouts, no celebrations. Instead, there's an exhaustion in their eyes, a hollow look that comes from fighting too long and too hard with too little left to give. Some shuffle forward in silence, wrapped in tattered coats, their bodies thin, their faces gaunt from hunger and sleepless nights. They walk like ghosts, moving through the ruins of their city, not yet knowing what comes next. You've seen so many like them, so many who have lost something along the way, something you're not sure can ever be regained. And yet, there is something in their eyes, a flicker of defiance, of determination. They are survivors, each one of them, and that survival barely hanging by a thread is what keeps the revolution alive. The war is over, but the fight for what was promised, for the better future that seemed so real when it all began, is far from finished. The revolution may have reshaped Russia, but it hasn't healed the wounds it has left behind. You wonder if it ever will. There's no return to the way things were, not for the city, not for the people. And yet, The question lingers in your mind, was it worth it? Was it worth the cold, the loss, the endless days of fighting for something you could never fully understand? The dream of a new Russia, one free from oppression, one where the people could finally live with dignity, now feels so distant, so fragile. But there's no turning back, no undoing what's been done. You pause, the snow falling heavily around you, and for a moment, everything is still again. You close your eyes, allowing the cold to wash over you, the sharp bite of the wind cutting through your face, but it doesn't sting like it did before. It's almost familiar now, this cold. It has become a part of you, as much as the memories of battle, the faces of the fallen, and the weary hope that flickers somewhere deep inside. You think of your comrades, the ones who are still here, still fighting, still standing. Some of them are hardened, their faces set in grim determination. Others are broken, worn down by the weight of their survival. You wonder how many of them, like you, are simply waiting for something, a sign, a change, something to believe in again. But what if that something doesn't come? What if the price of the revolution was too high, and what's left is only the struggle to survive, to hold on to whatever small piece of dignity remains? The wind picks up, and you wrap your coat tighter around you, pushing forward through the thickening snow. Your thoughts are interrupted by the distant sound of voices, faint but insistent, rising from somewhere ahead. You can't make out the words, but you know what they are. The revolution lives in the hearts of those who have survived. It's no longer about ideals or promises, it's about survival, about holding on to whatever little hope is left. And as long as that hope exists, as long as there are people like you who are still standing, the revolution will continue in ways both small and large. You reach the center of the city, the place that once thrummed with life, with the energy of those who believed in a brighter future. Now, it's quieter than ever, the streets empty, save for a few souls walking in silence, as though they, too, are lost in thought, wondering what comes next. It's a far cry from the bustling, vibrant city it once was. And yet, as you stand there in the middle of Petrograd, the snow swirling around you, the cold settling deep in your chest, you know something undeniable. The revolution has changed you. It has scarred you, yes, but it has also made you who you are. You are one of the survivors, one of the ones who lived through it all. And for as long as you draw breath, you will carry the weight of it. But there is no time to stop, no time to reflect too deeply. The future is uncertain, yes, but it is still ahead of you. It always will be. And so, you keep walking, because that's all you can do. The revolution lives on, even if its meaning has shifted, even if its goals seem so distant now. You march forward, knowing that survival itself is a form of resistance, a form of keeping the dream alive, no matter how cold or how dark it gets. The October Revolution of 1917 has etched its place in the annals of history. It is a defining moment in Russia's story, a seismic shift that altered the course of the nation. The overthrow of the Tsarist regime, the rise of the Bolsheviks, the dream of a new future, all of it seemed so certain in the heat of battle. But now, in the aftermath, you see how deeply the revolution has been marked by the winter that gripped Petrograd, the cold that seemed as fierce and unyielding as the forces that opposed you. That winter, more than just a season of harsh weather, became a symbol of the revolution itself. A battle for freedom, yes, but at an unimaginable cost. The snow that fell, blanketing the city in its frozen embrace, became a part of the revolution's story. The long, grueling months of survival in a city that had been torn apart by conflict reflected the fight for change, a struggle against forces both human and natural. It was a war not just for political change, but for survival against hunger, cold, and the weight of history itself. You look back at those days, now that the fighting has ended, and wonder, was it worth it? The revolution reshaped Russia, but at what price? The winter that followed has left more than just physical scars. It has left a deeper, more profound mark on the people. The stories of the revolution will always remember the victories and the dreams of a brighter future. But it's the winter, the hardships, that will remain in the memory of those who lived through it. The revolution was not just a battle for power, it was a battle against the elements, a test of endurance that would forever change the very fabric of the nation. The weight of that winter lingers in the bones of the city. It's not just the cold that persists in the memories of those who survived, it's the relentless endurance that it demanded. The struggle for change, for a better future, was far more complicated than any of the leaders or revolutionaries had anticipated. The snow that coated the streets like a thick veil hid the bodies of the fallen, left behind in the shadows of a revolution that promised freedom, but delivered a harsh reality. You walk through the empty streets of Petrograd, now quiet after the storms of battle. The snow still blankets the city, but the revolution's fire has turned to embers, and what remains feels like a fragile whisper of the dream it once was. The streets are no longer filled with cries of defiance or the passionate energy of those who believed in the cause. They are filled with the cold, the silence, and the hollow faces of the survivors. The bodies of those who fought alongside you are buried beneath the snow, their sacrifices etched into the city's very foundation. But their stories will never be fully told. They are just numbers in a history that will remember the victory, but not the cost. You glance at the people around you, those who remain. Their eyes are tired, their faces gaunt, and their bodies still aching from the long months of hunger, cold, and loss. They move through the streets like ghosts, like those who have lived through something that has stripped away not only their health, but their very sense of hope. They have survived the winter, yes, but what is left to hold on to? What was the revolution truly fought for, when the battle for survival seemed to eclipse everything else? There are no celebrations now. The streets are empty, save for a few of the brave souls who managed to make it through the darkness. Even they are not filled with pride or joy. What is left is a weariness, a deep fatigue that weighs on the heart, a silent mourning for everything that was lost. The city may have been claimed for the revolution, but what remains is not the dream of a better world. What remains is the struggle for survival in a city broken by its own aspirations. The cold continues to gnaw at you, creeping in, not just through your coat, but into your thoughts. You can't escape it, just as you can't escape the toll of the revolution. It wasn't just the political system that was overturned. It was the very fabric of the people. Their trust, their spirit, was bent by the weight of months spent fighting for something that is now only an echo in the wind. You stop for a moment, your breath visible in the sharp air, and think about the cost. What was it that you really fought for? Was it the political vision of a new world? Or was it just a desperate hope for a future without the grinding oppression that had marked the past? In the aftermath of the revolution, in the silence of the cold, the answer feels elusive. The victory doesn't feel like a victory at all. It feels like a beginning of something new, yes, but also the ending of something else. The fire that once burned bright has become a flickering ember, too weak to offer warmth, but still holding on, just barely. But there is something else too. In the deep quiet of the aftermath, a quiet strength, a resilience born of survival. You and the others have endured the unimaginable. You've survived the bitter cold, the hunger, the endless violence. You are scarred, yes, but you are still here. The revolution may not have given you the future you dreamed of, but it has shown you something else. It has shown you the power of the human spirit to endure, even when everything seems lost. The streets are still silent, but there is something in the way the survivors move through them. It's not defiance, not the fire of the battle you once fought, but a quiet strength. You see it in the way they hold themselves, in the way they keep moving forward, one step at a time. The revolution may have changed the course of history, but it has also changed each of them. It has made them survivors resilient, hardened, and more aware of the cost of change than anyone could have ever predicted. You turn away from the streets, and though the future remains uncertain, you know one thing for certain: the revolution has left its mark. The legacy of this fight will live on, not just in the history books or the political changes that follow, but in the souls of those who survived it. They are the true inheritors of this revolution, the ones who endured, who faced the harshest winter and emerged from it, broken but unbowed. And as long as they carry the memory of those who didn't make it, the revolution will never truly end. What remains after the battle is not just the political shift or the promises of a better tomorrow. What endures, what carries forward, is the indomitable spirit of the people who survived not just the political storm, but the literal storm of winter. For them, the revolution became more than a movement. It became a battle of resilience, a fight to endure in the face of overwhelming hardship, the cold, the hunger, the constant fear of death. These became as much a part of the struggle as the fight for freedom. The revolutionaries who lived through this time, who fought in the streets, who held the barricades despite their exhaustion and suffering, are the ones who truly defined this moment in history. They were not just soldiers or workers, they were survivors. Every day that they continued to fight, despite the odds, despite the frostbite and the hunger, was an act of defiance, an assertion of their will to see this revolution through. They had no illusions left. The grand ideals of a new world were replaced by a simpler, more immediate goal: to survive, to see tomorrow. And yet, despite all the loss, the suffering, they held on to something: the belief that change was possible, that their struggle meant something beyond the bitter cold and the broken bodies. That belief, however faint it had become, was their true victory. And it lives on in the memories of those who endured, who showed that even when everything else is stripped away, there is something unbreakable inside them, something that no cold or enemy can take away. The days have grown shorter, and the chill in the air feels as permanent as the scars left by the revolution. The streets, now eerily silent, are filled with the ghosts of those who fought and fell, their spirits lingering in every cracked window, every broken barricade. But despite the quiet, despite the weight of the loss that hangs over the city like a thick fog, something endures. It's in the way the survivors carry themselves, The way they move through the streets with a quiet strength, a kind of defiance that refuses to be extinguished. You've seen it in their eyes, those who made it through people who were once filled with fire and idealism, but are now tempered by the brutal reality of survival. Their faces are weary, their bodies bruised and broken, but their eyes still burn with the knowledge that they've lived through something unimaginable. They are not the same as they were before the revolution, but they are still here. They survived. And in that survival, there is something powerful. The revolution may have been born of dreams, dreams of a new, free world where equality and justice would reign. But in the end, those dreams were buried under the weight of cold, bloodshed, and hunger. The world they fought for feels distant now, almost like a fantasy. But what remains is not the dream itself, but the spirit that drove them to fight for it. The drive to change, to stand up against the odds, to push forward even when every part of you is screaming to give up. That is the true legacy of the revolution. As the cold settles deeper into the city, as the people move through the streets with the same grim determination, it becomes clear that what was won was not just a political victory, but a deeper, more personal one. They won the right to endure. The struggle for survival has become a testament to the strength of the human spirit, the willingness to continue even when all hope seems lost. The bitter winds may have stripped away the warmth from their bones, but they couldn't strip away the will to continue. But there's more to it than just survival. Even in the face of all the loss, the hunger, the despair, there's a flicker of something more, something intangible that keeps people moving forward. Maybe it's the faint, distant hope that somehow, somewhere, the revolution will fulfill its promise. Maybe it's just the will to carry on, to prove that even the harshest winter can't break you, that you are stronger than the forces that seek to defeat you. As the days pass and the snow continues to fall, you reflect on those who are still here, those who are still fighting not with rifles or barricades, but with the quiet defiance that comes from living in a world where survival is the only victory. They walk with heads held high, though their shoulders bear the weight of 1,000 losses. You walk beside them, your feet heavy in the snow, but your heart still beats, still fights, because in this moment, that is enough. The revolution may have changed everything, but the most significant change is the one inside the people who survived it. It's the quiet knowledge that they have endured. They have faced the darkest winter, the fiercest storms, and come out the other side. They are broken, yes, but they are not defeated. And that, in the end, is the revolution's true victory, the knowledge that, even in the face of overwhelming odds, there is something inside you that cannot be destroyed. The snow falls in silence now, covering everything in its cold embrace. But it no longer feels like a threat. It's simply the world as it is, a harsh, unforgiving place, but one that the survivors will continue to navigate. The battle may be over, the revolution's promise unfulfilled, but the spirit of those who endured will carry forward, etched into the very soul of the city, into the very soul of Russia itself. You walk deeper into the heart of Petrograd, your footsteps leaving faint marks in the snow, a trail that will soon be covered by more of the endless white. The city feels quieter now, but it is not the peaceful stillness of a place at rest. It's the silence of a city haunted by what it's lost and what it's become. The revolution has reshaped the land, but it has left a deep scar on the people. The streets, still bearing the marks of battle, stand as monuments to everything that was sacrificed: the bodies, the lives, the dreams of a new world that now seem like they were always just out of reach. As you pass through these desolate streets, you can't help but think about the faces of the fallen, those who won't live to see the aftermath of what they fought for. They will never hear the stories of what came next, the quiet years that followed, when the revolution was no longer a battle but a memory. These men and women, whose names were never recorded in history books, whose sacrifices were never formally acknowledged, are they forgotten forever? The city remembers them in the way it carries their ghosts, in the lingering air of grief and determination. They will never be forgotten by those who survived, by the ones who live with their loss every single day. The survivors walk alongside you, each of them carrying their own invisible burdens. Some wear the weight of broken bodies, others the weight of lost families, but all of them carry the scars, both seen and unseen, of what they endured. Their eyes tell a story of struggle, of loss, and of resilience. For them, the revolution is not a mere chapter in history. It is a living thing, a part of who they are. The cold, the hunger, the endless battles it has shaped them, molded them into something different. And though the revolution has taken much from them, it has also given them something: a quiet strength, a fierce belief in their own survival, in their ability to endure against all odds. That is the true legacy of the revolution: resilience in the face of unthinkable hardship. The streets of Petrograd may have fallen silent, but the revolution is far from over. It lives on in the hearts of the survivors, in the way they continue to move forward despite everything they've lost. It lives on in the unspoken bond they share, a shared understanding of what it took to survive, what it meant to fight for something bigger than themselves. Even if that something is now more about survival than about the grand ideals of freedom and change. As you look out at the city, you feel the weight of everything that has come before. The city that was once full of hope, full of life, now stands as a silent witness to everything that was lost and everything that remains. The revolution may not have brought the new world that was promised, but it has left behind something just as significant: a people who fought and survived, who learned the true cost of change. And in that survival, there is something powerful. The revolution may have scarred them, but it hasn't broken them. They carry the weight of what they've lost, but they also carry the strength of their endurance. They are the living legacy of that frozen revolution, the ones who fought for something better, who faced the bitterest cold, who survived the storm and came out the other side. They may have lost everything, but they still have each other. And that, in the end, is the most powerful victory of all. You walk onward, through the streets of a city forever changed, your heart heavy with the weight of what you've seen, what you've lived through, but also filled with the quiet pride of knowing that you, too, have survived. The fight for freedom may have been costly, but in the end, the true revolution is not about what was won, it's about what remains. And what remains is the spirit of those who refuse to give up, who endured not just for a new world, but for the strength to keep going, to keep fighting, no matter how impossible it seemed. The revolution may have been won, but for those who lived through it, the victory came at a personal price. The streets of Petrograd, now quieter after the storm, still echo with the ghosts of battle. The air, thick with the memories of months spent fighting, holds a heavy silence that lingers in the hearts of the survivors. The ideals that fueled the revolution, freedom, equality, a new dawn for Russia, seem distant now, lost in the bitter winds of winter. The city that once blazed with hope has been dulled by the cost of the fight, and the people who stood tall in its name have been forever changed. For those who endured the brutal winter of 1917, the revolution is no longer just a political moment in history. It is a part of their very being, woven into their souls like the cold that gripped their bones. The long nights of hunger and fear, the endless battles fought in the snow, the loss of comrades who fell along the way, these are the true victories and defeats. The revolution, as it was promised, was about more than just seizing power. It was about enduring the unimaginable, surviving not only the forces of the enemy but also the brutal forces of nature itself. And as much as the revolutionaries fought for a new world, they also fought for survival, for the right to keep breathing, to keep moving forward, when everything around them seemed intent on pulling them back into the abyss. The winter, unrelenting and unforgiving, became more than just a season. It became a symbol of the revolution itself. The cold, the hunger, the isolation, it all mirrored the political struggle, the sacrifices made by those who hoped for something better. Every frozen step taken in the streets, every moment spent huddled around a small fire for warmth, was a reminder of the cost. Victory, when it came, was not the triumphant, celebratory event that had been envisioned. Instead, it was the quiet acknowledgement of survival, of having made it through the darkest winter the revolution had to offer. And though the revolutionaries achieved their goal, they would carry the weight of that winter with them for the rest of their lives. The cold, the hunger, the despair, these are the elements that shaped the lives of those who fought for the revolution. What had been a fierce desire for change became, by the end, a struggle against forces far more immediate and personal. The revolutionaries learned early on that ideals alone could not sustain them. The cold and the hunger would not be swayed by speeches or slogans. The endless snow, the freezing winds, the frozen streets, they became as much a part of the revolution as the battles fought on the barricades. The victory over the Tsarist regime, the political victory that changed the course of history, was marred by the human cost, the suffering that was borne by those who were left standing in the aftermath. For those who survived, the memories of that brutal winter would never fade. The cold would haunt them forever, a ghost that lingered in their thoughts, in their bodies, in their souls. The hunger, too, would follow them, its sharp bite a reminder of everything they had lost in the struggle. They would remember the faces of those who fell beside them, the comrades who never made it to see the revolution's end, and the toll that the cold exacted on their bodies. The revolution had promised a new world, but it delivered something different, a fractured, tired, and broken world where the people, though victorious, had lost so much in the fight. And yet, despite all this, they survived. They endured. The winter may have taken much from them, but it also gave them something, a resilience that no amount of cold or hardship could erase. It taught them how to keep going when there seemed to be no way forward, how to stand firm in the face of overwhelming adversity. The survivors of the revolution would carry that lesson with them for the rest of their lives. The cold may have taken their health, their families, their futures, but it could never take their will to survive. That spirit, that quiet defiance, would live on, not just in their memories, but in the very fabric of the nation they had fought to reshape. As the story of the revolution comes to a close, we reflect on the deeper lessons that the cold taught those who lived through it. It wasn't just the physical struggle against the elements that defined the revolutionaries. It was the way they met the challenge, the way they rose each day in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. The cold became a metaphor for their endurance, a testament to their resilience and their unwillingness to give up, no matter the cost. The revolution wasn't just a political shift, it was a test of human spirit, a battle to survive when everything else seemed destined to break you. For the survivors, the cold became a part of their identity, woven into their very being. It became a reminder that no matter what they had faced, they had made it through. And even though the world had changed around them, even though the revolution had left scars, they remained. The winter of 1917 was not just a physical season, it was a season of the soul, one that stripped them down to their core, revealing their strength, their determination, and their capacity to endure. So, as we reflect on the events of the October Revolution and the lasting impact of that winter, we remember not just the political changes it brought, but the human cost, the lives lost, the bodies broken, and the strength that emerged from the struggle. The revolution is not just a chapter in history, it is the story of those who lived through it, who survived not only the political storm but the literal storm of winter. They are the ones who define the true legacy of the revolution. Good evening.